My daughter took me on a cruise, then tried to sell my house while I was at sea. A healing vacation after William's death becomes a trap designed to keep Rebecca unreachable during a rushed closing. A shipboard internet message from her longtime neighbor reveals that strangers are touring her home. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel for more stories of family betrayal, truth, and hard-earned dignity. And tell me in the comments, if you discovered someone had entered your home without permission, who would be the first person you called? The message came through at 2:17 inches the morning. I was sitting alone in a dark lounge near the back of the ship, wrapped in a cardigan I had brought, because the ocean air always felt colder than people promised it would. Outside the windows, the Atlantic was black and endless. Inside, the only sound was the low hum of the engines beneath my feet, and a bartender stacking clean glasses at the far end of the room. My daughter, Claire, had gone to bed hours earlier. She had told me I needed rest. She had told me I needed a change of scenery. She had told me that after losing William, I had spent too many months in the same quiet house, making coffee for two and drinking it alone. And for a while, I had believed her. Then my phone lit up. It was an email from my neighbor, Harold Bennett. Harold had lived across the street from William and me for 26 years. He had watched my daughter grow up. He had helped William replace a section of fence after a spring storm. He had brought me chicken soup the week after William's funeral, then stood on my front porch pretending he had forgotten his hat because he could tell I did not want to be alone. The subject line of his message said, "Rebecca, please call me. Something is wrong." The ship's internet was slow and unreliable. It took almost a full minute for the email to load. Then I read the first sentence. "Rebecca, I saw two couples touring your house this afternoon with a real estate agent. Claire was there. She told them you were away and had already agreed to sell." For a few seconds, I did not understand what I was reading. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then another line appeared beneath it. "I asked her if you knew. She told me you were not in a state to deal with details after William's death." I did not like the way she said it. My hands began to shake. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just enough that I had to set the phone down on the table. Across the ocean, strangers had walked through my home. They had stood in my kitchen. They had looked through the windows. William and I had installed ourselves one summer when we were still young enough to think ladders were harmless and weekends could last forever. They had probably admired the built-in shelves William made for my cookbooks. They had probably looked at the yellow curtains in the breakfast nook and said something like, "This room gets beautiful morning light." And my own daughter had let them in. I picked up the phone and called Harold. The call failed. I tried again. Failed. I sent him a message instead. "Harold, what do you mean they toured my house? I never listed it." The reply took 3 minutes. 3 of the longest minutes of my life. Finally, the little typing bubble appeared. Then, his answer came. "The agent's name is Daniel Mercer." I wrote it down. I heard Claire say, "The closing had to happen fast because you were traveling and emotionally overwhelmed." "Rebecca, I am sorry. I should have called sooner. I thought maybe this was something you had discussed." I looked across the lounge at the dark windows. My reflection stared back at me. A 68-year-old widow with silver gray hair, tired eyes, and a phone clutched in both hands like it was the only solid thing in the world. For the first time since Claire had suggested this cruise, I understood why she had chosen it. Not because I needed healing, because she needed distance. She needed me in the middle of the ocean, where every call could fail, every message could arrive late, and every hour I spent trying to reach home would make it easier for her to move ahead without me. The ship was scheduled to dock in Nassau that afternoon. We were still more than 10 hours away. And somewhere in Willow Creek, Ohio. My daughter was telling people that my grief had made me too confused to understand what was happening to my own house. I sat there until the bartender finally asked if I was all right. I almost told him no. I almost told him my husband had been dead for 9 months. My daughter had taken me on a cruise I could not afford to be on. And while I was surrounded by water, she was trying to sell the only home William and I had ever owned. But the truth was, I did not yet know enough to say all that. I had a message. I had a name. I had a terrible feeling in my chest. And I had learned something important during the years. William and I spent balancing bills, caring for aging parents, and raising a child on one dependable income, and a lot of sacrifice. When someone wants you to panic, the first thing you do is slow down. So I took a breath. Then I opened my notes app and wrote down every detail Harold had given me. Daniel Mercer. Possible rushed closing. Claire said I was emotionally overwhelmed. Tours happened that afternoon. I typed the date. I typed the time. And then I sat in that shipboard lounge until the sun began to rise over the water, trying to understand how my daughter and I had gotten here. Because Claire had not always been the kind of person who could look a neighbor in the eye and lie about her mother. At least, I had not thought so. After William died, the house became quiet in ways I was not prepared for. People talk about grief like it is a heavy blanket. They say it sits on your chest. They say it steals your sleep. All of that is true. But nobody tells you how grief changes the ordinary sounds in a home. The refrigerator seems louder. The clock in the hallway becomes unbearable. A floorboard creaks. And for half a second you think your husband is coming down the hall. Then you remember, and you have to lose him all over again. William and I had been married for 43 years. He was a patient man. The kind who could fix a stubborn cabinet, hinge without saying a harsh word, who never threw away a receipt because you never know, and who believed the best thing a person could give their family was not money but stability. This house is our anchor, he used to say. He would stand in the backyard with a cup of coffee, looking at the maple tree we planted when Claire was in high school. Everything else can change, he would say, but if we keep our home, we keep our footing. We bought the house when Claire was 6 years old. It was not fancy. It was a 2-story brick home on a quiet street with a narrow front porch and a backyard big enough for a vegetable garden, a swing set, and later, one old maple tree that grew wider every year. William worked maintenance for the county school district. I worked at the Willow Creek Public Library, first at the circulation desk, and later helping seniors learn how to use computers and email. We did not have much extra money when Claire was young, but we had a home. We made payments on time. We painted the bedrooms ourselves. We saved for every repair. When the furnace gave out, William took extra weekend shifts. When Claire wanted to attend a summer arts program, I picked up hours sorting donated books. When she got into college, we used the savings we had meant to put toward a kitchen remodel and told ourselves we could live with worn cabinets a few more years. We were proud of her. Claire had always been bright, ambitious, the first person in our family to earn a business degree. For years, she said she wanted to build something bigger than Willow Creek. After college, she moved to Columbus and worked in marketing. Then she married a man named Brian, who sold commercial insurance and always spoke as though every conversation was a presentation he had prepared in advance. At first, I liked him. He was polite. He brought flowers on Mother's Day. He called William, Sir. But Brian had a way of looking around our house that made me uneasy. Not openly. Not rudely. Just carefully. His eyes would linger on the original hardwood floors, the wide lot, the detached garage, the fact that our street had become more desirable as younger families moved into the neighborhood. During Thanksgiving dinner, he had said, "You know, houses around here are going for much more than people realize." William had smiled and said, "That may be true." Brian leaned back in his chair. "You ever think about downsizing?" William looked at me before he answered. "Not unless we want to." It was a simple sentence. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now I remembered how quickly Brian had changed the subject. After William's funeral, Claire started coming around more often. At first, I was grateful. She brought groceries. She helped me sort through condolence cards. She sat beside me at the kitchen table and asked if I was sleeping. But over time, her concern began to arrive with questions. "Mom, are you sure you can manage this house alone? Mom, have you thought about what happens if the stairs become too much? Mom, do you know where Dad kept all the paperwork? Mom, what are you paying for insurance now?" I answered, because she was my daughter, and because part of me thought she was trying to help. When you lose someone you have depended on for 43 years, you become painfully aware of the things they used to handle without making a fuss. William organized our home records. He knew which contractor to call. He remembered the exact date we refinanced the mortgage. Even though we had paid it off years ago, he kept a black accordion folder in the desk drawer with insurance papers, tax records, warranties, and a handwritten list of every account we had. After he died, I had to learn all of it. Not because I was incapable before, but because we had divided our lives the way married people often do. He handled some things. I handled others. I knew every due date for every bill. I knew the name of every librarian who had worked beside me. I knew how much money we could afford to spend at Christmas without putting pressure on January. But I had let William keep the house paperwork organized because he enjoyed doing it. Claire mistook that for weakness. Or maybe she needed to. The first time she asked to see the deed, I was standing at the counter, slicing apples. She was visiting on a Sunday afternoon. Brian had stayed home. She said, because he had work to catch up on. "Mom," she said casually, "have you located the deed yet?" I looked up from the cutting board. "The deed?" "Yeah. I mean, it's important to know where things are, in case of emergencies." "There isn't an emergency." "I know. I'm just saying." I wiped my hands on a dish towel. "The original is in the safe deposit box. There's a copy in William's folder." Claire nodded too quickly. "Good. That's good." Then she looked toward the hallway where William's desk sat in the small room we used to call his office. "You should probably let me make copies, just so I have them." "I don't think that's necessary." Her smile stayed in place, but something in her eyes shifted. "Mum, I'm not trying to take anything." "I didn't say you were." "No, but you got defensive." I remember feeling guilty after she left. That is the part I've had to forgive myself for. I felt guilty because I had noticed something was wrong. I felt guilty because I had trusted my own instincts. For weeks afterward, she continued to speak about the house as though it were a problem that needed solving. She sent me links to senior apartments. She told me about a new retirement community outside Columbus where I could have a fresh start. She talked about less maintenance, more activities, fewer responsibilities. But every time she mentioned it, she avoided the most important question. What did I want? Then, in early spring, she came to my house with a brochure for a Caribbean cruise. It was glossy and bright. White beaches, blue water, couples laughing beneath umbrellas. The words on the front said, "Restore your spirit." "I booked us a cabin," she told me. I stared at her. "You booked us a what?" "A cruise." "Mom." 7 nights. Just the two of us. "Claire, I can't afford a cruise." "You don't have to. Brian and I are covering it." I shook my head immediately. "No, that's too much." "It's not too much. You have been shut inside this house since Dad died." I leave the house. You go to the grocery store and church? That isn't the same thing. Her voice softened. Please, let me do this for you. I wish I could say I agreed because I was lonely. That was part of it. But the larger truth was that I wanted to believe my daughter was still trying to care for me. I wanted to believe that the questions about paperwork, the comments about downsizing, the sudden interest in the value of my home, those were all clumsy expressions of concern. So I said yes. 3 days before we left, Claire came over to help me pack. She brought a new suitcase and insisted on handling the details. Do you have your passport? She asked. Yes. Your medications? Yes. Your phone charger? Yes. Then she paused beside the kitchen counter. You should leave your house keys with me, she said. Just in case something happens while we're gone. I looked at her. Like what? A pipe burst. A storm. Anything. I had left my spare key with Harold for years. He had one in a little magnetic lockbox under his porch railing. And I had one for him in the flower pot by my back door. I already have Harold, I said. Claire's mouth tightened. Mum, I'm your daughter. I know that. Then why do you trust your neighbor more than me? The question landed exactly where she intended it to. I did not want to hurt her. I did not want to make her feel excluded. So I gave her a spare key from the drawer beside the refrigerator. The morning we left, she walked through the house behind me, checking windows and turning off lights. At the time, I thought she was being thoughtful. Now I remembered the way she lingered in William's office, the way she stood by the desk drawer, the way she asked, "Are you bringing your documents with you?" I laughed lightly. Why would I bring paperwork on a cruise? She smiled. You're right. Forget I asked. That evening, when we boarded the ship, she took a picture of me standing on the deck. The wind was lifting my hair, and I was wearing the navy blouse. William had always liked smile. Mom, she said, you deserve this? For months afterward, that photograph stayed on my phone. A picture of a grieving woman at sea, trying to accept kindness from her child. But now, sitting in that dim lounge with Harold's email open in front of me, I looked at the date stamp on the photograph. It had been taken at 5:40, 2 inches the evening. Less than 3 hours later, according to Harold, a real estate agent had entered my home with prospective buyers. Claire had not waited until we were far from shore. She had waited until I was already trapped. At 8 that morning, I found her in the ship's breakfast buffet, calmly stirring sugar into her coffee. She looked rested. That was what hurt me most. Not angry, not nervous, not ashamed. Rested. Mum, she said brightly. There you are. I was wondering where you went. I set my phone on the table between us. Who is Daniel Mercer? The color left her face so quickly, I almost missed it. Then she reached for the phone. I placed my hand over it. Who is he? For one long moment, Claire said nothing. Around us, people laughed. Plates clinked. A child cried because he had dropped a pancake. The whole world continued as though my daughter had not just been caught trying to sell my home. Finally, she leaned closer and lowered her voice. Mom, Harold is exaggerating. Answer the question. He's a realtor. My throat tightened. Why was a realtor in my house? Claire looked down at her coffee. I was only exploring options. You brought buyers into my home? I brought people to look at it. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Her eyes hardened. You don't understand how much that house is worth right now. I understand exactly what it is worth. You understand the memories? You don't understand the opportunity. I felt something inside me become very still. What opportunity? Claire glanced around the room before speaking again. Brian has a business investment. It's time sensitive. And Mom, you have all this equity tied up in a house that is too big for you. I could barely breathe. You plan to use my house to pay for Brian's investment? No, that's not what I said. It is exactly what you said. She shook her head. Impatient now. I'm trying to help you move into something easier. Something safer. We could put the money where it actually does something for you. For me? Yes. You mean for you? She folded her arms. You always do this. You act like I'm the enemy for trying to make practical decisions. My house is not yours to make decisions about. Her voice dropped even lower. Mom, you have been struggling since Dad died. Everyone can see it. I looked at her. Who is everyone? She did not answer. And that silence told me something I had not wanted to consider. This was not a private mistake. This was not one reckless conversation with a real estate agent. Claire had been preparing people to believe I was incapable. She had been building a story about me. A story in which my grief made me confused. A story in which I could not handle paperwork. A story in which she had to step in and make difficult decisions for me. And while I sat across from her on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic, she had been trying to turn that story into a sale. I picked up my phone and stood. Where are you going? She asked. To call an attorney. Mom, don't overreact. I looked down at her. For the first time in my life, I did not soften my voice to make her comfortable. You took me out to sea so I could not stop you. Her mouth opened, then closed. I walked away before she could find another lie. But I had no idea yet that the real estate agent was not the most dangerous part of Claire's plan. Because when I finally reached Daniel Mercer later that morning, he told me there was already a buyer. And someone had handed him paperwork that claimed I had agreed to sell my home for nearly $90,000 less than its value. Daniel Mercer did not answer the first time I called. Or the second. By the third attempt, I was standing in a narrow corridor outside the ship's business center, watching the weak Wi-Fi symbol disappear and reappear at the top of my phone. I had paid $28 for 24 hours of internet access, and every minute felt like something Claire had counted on. Finally, a man answered. This is Daniel Mercer. My name is Rebecca Clark. I said, You have been showing my house? There was a pause. Not a long one, but long enough. Mrs. Clark, he said carefully. I was told you were traveling. I am traveling. I am not unavailable. I understand. No, I said. I don't think you do. I never listed my house for sale. I never authorized you to show it. And I never agreed to any price. The ship lurched slightly beneath my feet. I grabbed the wall with one hand and held the phone tighter with the other. Daniel did not sound defensive. If anything, he sounded uneasy. Your daughter contacted my office 10 days ago, he said. She said you wanted to sell quickly after your husband passed. She explained that traveling was difficult for you emotionally and that you preferred her to manage the early steps. I told her no such thing. I was given a signed listing agreement. My heart dropped. A signed what? A listing agreement. It included your name, your address, and what appeared to be your signature. I closed my eyes. There are moments when fear turns into something colder. Not panic. Not yet. Just the sharp understanding that another person has been moving pieces around, while you were still trying to understand the board. Email it to me, I said. Mrs. Clark. Because of privacy. You have my home on the market based on a document with my name on it. Email it to me now. He exhaled slowly. All right. The attachment arrived 7 minutes later. I opened it with my back against the hallway wall. At the top of the page was my name, Rebecca Ann Clark. Underneath was my home address, And at the bottom, beside a date from 4 days before the cruise, was a signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. To someone who had never watched me sign a birthday card, or a check, or a library authorization form, it might have looked convincing. But I knew my own handwriting. My first name curved slightly upward at the end because I had learned to write from a left-handed mother who used to tilt every piece of paper toward me. My capital R had a long, narrow loop. I never signed my middle name in full. I always wrote A. The signature on that document said Rebecca Ann Clark. The R was too round. The letters leaned too far to the right. And the final K in Clark ended with a hard downward slash I had never made in my life. It was not my signature. It was someone trying to make a signature look important. I called Daniel back. That signature is forged, I told him. He was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Clark, I need to be very clear. I am not accusing anyone of anything, but if you are telling me you did not sign that document, I have to suspend all activity immediately. Do that. I will pull the listing. Not yet. The words came out before I had time to think them through. Daniel paused. Not yet? Do not show the house again. Do not speak to any buyers without me. But I need you to preserve every email, every text, every document, every note, every message you received from my daughter or anyone connected to her. His tone changed. It became more professional, more careful. Are you planning to speak with an attorney? Yes. Then I recommend you do that as soon as possible. I will. There is one more thing you should know, he said. I pressed the phone against my ear. What? The buyer's offer was not informal. There is a signed purchase agreement. My knees weakened. I never signed a purchase agreement. I understand. The agreement has your signature as seller. But the closing was set up to happen through remote notarization after you returned from your trip. After I returned? Yes. I leaned against the wall again. Then why was everyone in such a hurry? Daniel hesitated. Mrs. Clark, the buyer's financing contingency expires in 6 days. Your daughter told us you had agreed to sell below market value because you wanted a fast, uncomplicated transition. Below market value? The phrase felt almost insulting in its neatness. They had not only tried to sell my home, they had tried to rush it through before anyone could ask why a widow was suddenly willing to give away nearly $90,000 in equity. Who is the buyer? I asked. I can't disclose that without authorization. You have a forged contract with my name on it. Mrs. Clark, I'm trying to help within the limits of my license. I took a breath. Then tell me this. Is the buyer connected to my daughter or her husband? Another pause. This one was longer. I don't know that, he said. But he said it like a man who had just realized he should find out. I ended the call and stood alone in that corridor, while passengers passed me carrying beach bags and sun hats. Everybody looked happy. That is one of the strange things about betrayal. It can happen in the middle of ordinary life. People can be choosing desserts, taking photographs, buying souvenirs, while your world quietly splits open in a hallway. I went back to the cabin. Claire was inside, sitting on the bed with her knees drawn up beneath a white robe. She had the television on with the sound muted. When I entered, she looked at my face and immediately knew I had learned more. Mum, she said, please don't make this bigger than it is. I set my phone down on the small table. You forged my signature. Her expression changed. Not to shock. Not to innocence. To anger. I did not forge anything. Daniel Mercer sent me the listing agreement. You're upset. You're grieving. You're looking at everything like it's an attack. I know my own signature. Claire stood. You don't understand what Brian and I are dealing with. There it is again, I said. What you are dealing with. She pressed both hands against her forehead. His business is in trouble. Okay? He got caught in a bad investment. We thought we could fix it. With my house? We were not going to leave you with nothing. I stared at her. She said it as though that was supposed to comfort me. What exactly were you planning to leave me with? Akundo. Something manageable. You could be closer to us. You were going to sell the home your father and I paid for over 40 years. Buy me a smaller place. I did not choose. And use the rest to solve Brian's problem. We would pay it back. With what? Claire looked away. And there was my answer. With nothing, I said quietly. You don't know that. You don't know anything about repayment? You only know you need money now. She turned toward the window. I was trying to save my marriage. The sentence landed differently. For a moment, I saw my daughter not as the woman who had deceived me, but as the little girl who used to sleep with her hallway light on because she was afraid of storms. I wanted to ask what Brian had done to make her so desperate. I wanted to pull her into my arms and tell her she could come home, that she did not have to destroy herself to keep a man from leaving. But then I remembered the forged signature, the buyers walking through my bedroom, the words she had used about me, emotionally overwhelmed, not in a state to deal with details. She had not come to me and said, "Mom, I am in trouble." She had decided my grief made me easier to use. "Claire," I said, "if your marriage needs saving, you save it with the truth, not by stealing from me." She faced me again, tears in her eyes. "You always loved Dad's way of doing things. Slow, careful, moral. But real life doesn't work like that anymore." I felt my chest tighten. Your father's way of doing things was not weakness. No, it was naive. That hurt more than I expected. William had spent his whole life making sure Claire had options. He had attended every dance recital, every school play, every college orientation. When she was 23 and could not make rent after losing her first job, he drove to Columbus without telling her he was coming and left an envelope of cash under her apartment door. He had never held it over her. He never called her irresponsible. He just helped. And now she was standing in our cabin, calling his values naive because they stood in the way of what she wanted. "You will not speak about him that way," I said. Claire's face went still. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she picked up her purse. "I need some air." "Where are you going?" "Somewhere I don't have to be treated like a criminal." I looked at her. "You forged my name." She opened the cabin door. Then she stopped without turning around. "I didn't do it alone," she said. The door closed behind her. I stood there for a long time. Not because I did not understand what she meant, because I did. Brian had known. Maybe he had planned it. Maybe the buyer was connected to him. Maybe Daniel had been told to move quickly because someone needed the money before creditors came asking questions. But there was another possibility that frightened me more. Someone else had access to the documents in William's office. Someone else may have known where I kept the spare key. Someone else may have helped create the story that I was incapable of making decisions. I called Harold again. This time, the connection held. "Rebecca," he said, and I could hear the worry in his voice. "I've been trying to reach you." "Harold, I need you to listen carefully." "Of course. Do not confront Claire. Do not confront anyone at my house. But I need you to take photographs from the sidewalk if you see anyone go inside. I need dates, times, car descriptions, license plates if you can safely get them." "You think they're still showing it?" "I don't know." "I can do that." "And Harold?" "Yes?" "Please check the side gate by the garage." There was silence. "Why?" because the key Claire had was for the front door. But she knew your key was hidden near the back porch. You think she gave someone access? I don't know what I think yet. Harold's voice softened. Rebecca, you don't have to handle this alone. For the first time since the message arrived, I let myself feel how terrified I was. I know, I said, but I need you to be careful. An hour later, he sent me 3 photographs. The first showed my house from across the street. There was a silver SUV parked in the driveway. The second showed a man in a dark polo shirt walking toward the front door with a woman carrying a folder. The third made my stomach drop. It was a picture of the side gate. The latch was open, and beside it, caught in the afternoon light, was a small blue lockbox hanging from the fence. The lockbox Harold had given me 12 years earlier, the one that held the emergency key, the one only William, Harold, and I were supposed to know existed. But it was open, and the key was gone. At the same time, another email appeared in my inbox. This one was from a law firm I did not recognize. The subject line read, "Urgent, revised closing documents, require confirmation." I opened it. The email began with my name. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Mrs. Clark, because your daughter has represented that you may be unable to travel to the closing due to emotional and cognitive instability following your husband's death, we have prepared an alternative authorization package for signature. Below it was an attachment. A power of attorney. Not from me. From me? And the person listed to control my property, finance, and legal decisions was Claire. I read the email 3 times before the meaning settled into my body. Claire had not only planned to sell my house, she had prepared a way to explain why I might object. According to the proposed power of attorney, I was emotionally unstable after William's death. I was having trouble managing complex financial decisions. I needed my daughter to act on my behalf. It was not a document I had signed. It was a document designed to make my signature unnecessary. I sat on the edge of the ship's bed with the phone in my lap, and felt something inside me break not my courage. Not yet. But the last excuse I had been making for Claire. Until that moment, some part of me had still wanted to believe this was a desperate mistake. A bad plan encouraged by Brian. A terrible shortcut she would regret once she understood the damage. But this was different. This was a strategy. She had told the real estate agent I was too overwhelmed to participate. She had given strangers access to my home. She had used a forged signature. And now, she was trying to build legal authority around a lie that I could not think clearly for myself. The cruelty was not that she wanted money. The cruelty was that she needed me to become small in other people's eyes before she could take it. I called the number at the bottom of the email. A receptionist answered after 2 rings. Law offices of Hensley, Brett, and Cole. My name is Rebecca Clark. I said, I received an email about a power of attorney prepared in my name. Let me transfer you to the paralegal handling that file. A woman came on the line a minute later. Her name was Melissa Grant. Her voice was polite but rushed. The voice of someone who believed she was handling a simple administrative matter. Mrs. Clark, your daughter contacted our office regarding an authorization package. She said, we were told you would be returning from travel shortly. I did not ask for an authorization package. There was a pause. I see. I have never signed a power of attorney for my daughter. I have never been diagnosed with cognitive instability. I have never asked anyone to sell my home. The rushed quality disappeared from her voice. Mrs. Clark, are you saying the information provided to us may be inaccurate? I am saying it is false. Can you confirm your date of birth and address? I did. Then Melissa said, please stay on the line. For almost 5 minutes, I listened to silence broken only by the faint clicking of keys. When she returned, her voice had changed completely. "Mrs. Clark, I need to tell you that the power of attorney has not been executed. No notary has witnessed it, and no authority has been granted." I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. "But," she continued, "your daughter asked us to prepare the forms quickly. She also requested a letter stating that you were unable to attend an in-person closing due to grief-related limitations." My hand tightened around the phone. Who told her I had limitations? She provided a written statement. From whom? "I'm sorry, but I cannot disclose more until we review the file. I am the person being described in that file." "I understand. And I will make sure our supervising attorney knows that you have disputed the entire matter." "Do that," I said, "and preserve every document you received? Every email, every attachment, every message from Claire or Brian?" "Yes, Mom. Also, no one in your office is to speak to my daughter about this call. We will note that." When I ended the call, I sent an email to Daniel Mercer, copying Melissa Grant and the title company listed in the closing documents. I kept it short. I did not accuse Claire of crimes I had not yet proved. I did not write out my pain. I stated facts. I am Rebecca Clark, sole owner of 1,847 Maple Ridge Drive, Willow Creek, Ohio. I have not listed my home for sale. I have not signed a listing agreement, purchase agreement, power of attorney, or remote closing authorization. Any documents stating otherwise are disputed as unauthorized. Please suspend all activity, preserve all records, and communicate with me directly. Then I added one sentence William would have appreciated. No person, including my daughter, has authority to act for me. I pressed send. A few minutes later, I called the one person I knew would understand both the legal danger and the emotional weight of what was happening. My attorney was named Evelyn Ross. She had helped William and me update our wills after he retired. She was not flashy. She wore sensible shoes, spoke in complete sentences, and had a habit of placing both hands on a file before she gave advice. "Rebecca," she said when I reached her office, "Harold told me you were on a cruise." "I am." That sounds less relaxing than intended. I almost laughed. Instead, I told her everything. The cruise, the real estate tours, the forged signature, the below-market offer, the power of attorney, the claim that I was unstable. Evelyn did not interrupt. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You did exactly the right thing by putting the dispute in writing." "Can Claire sell my house without me?" "Not legally. Not if the deed is in your name alone, and no valid power of attorney exists." "Then why did she think she could?" "Because people sometimes confuse pressure with authority," Evelyn said. "And because a rushed transaction can make professionals less careful than they should be?" My eyes filled. "She is my daughter." "I know. I raised her to be better than this." Evelyn's voice softened. "Rebecca, her choice is not proof that you failed her. But what happens next must be based on evidence, not hope." That was the sentence I needed. Not comfort. Clarity. Evelyn told me to do 3 things immediately. First, she would file an affidavit with the county recorder and notify the title company that I disputed any attempted transfer of my home. Second, she would send a formal cease and desist letter to Daniel Mercer, the prospective buyer's attorney, the title company, and Claire. Third, she would arrange for me to meet with a notary and a local attorney as soon as the ship docked in Nassau, so I could sign sworn statements before returning home. "Can I do that outside Ohio?" I asked. You can sign an affidavit before an authorized notary where you are, she said. We will handle the rest here. What about the forged documents? We will request the originals and all metadata. Let's not decide the full legal path until we see what they submitted and who knew what. That was Evelyn's way. She never promised fireworks. She promised records. By lunchtime, I had received replies from Daniel Mercer and the title company. Daniel's email was brief. All showings and negotiations have been suspended. Pending review. The title company's response was more direct. No closing will proceed without direct verification from Rebecca Clark and review by counsel. For the first time since Harold's message, I felt the ground beneath me again. Not because the danger was gone, but because the lie had stopped moving forward. Claire found me that afternoon, near the ship's upper deck. The sky was bright, and the ocean looked impossibly blue. Families were taking pictures beside the railing. Music played from hidden speakers. Somewhere behind us, someone was laughing loudly enough that it sounded careless. Claire walked toward me slowly. She looked pale. "Mom," she said. "Daniel called me." I turned from the water. "And?" "He said the listing is suspended." "Yes." "He said you accused me of fraud." I said I did not sign the documents. "You made me sound like a criminal?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Claire, what would you call using another person's name without permission?" Her face tightened. "I was trying to protect us." "Who is us?" She looked away. "Brian and me." "And what about me?" "We were going to make sure you were okay." "No," I said. "You were going to make sure I had no way to stop you." She began to cry then. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Her tears slid down her face as she pressed one hand over her mouth. "I didn't know what else to do," she whispered. "You could have told me the truth." "Brian said you would never understand." "Brian does not know me." "He said you would make me choose." I felt something sad settle over me. "Did you choose him?" Claire did not answer. I did not need her to. She had chosen him every time she lied about me. Every time she walked into my house with a buyer. Every time she told someone I was too fragile to speak for myself. I took out my phone and opened the email from the law office. "Did you tell them I was cognitively unstable?" Her eyes moved to the screen. "I said you were having a hard time." "That is not what I asked." She swallowed. "I said you were forgetful sometimes." I thought of the mornings after William died, when I had walked into the kitchen and forgotten why I was there. I thought of the afternoon I called Claire crying because I could not remember whether I had paid the gas bill. I had been grieving. I had been lonely. I had trusted her with the moments I was least steady, and she had turned them into evidence against me. "Did Brian tell you to say that?" "He said it would help them understand why I needed to manage things." "Did you tell the real estate agent I had agreed to sell?" She closed her eyes. "Yes." "Did you sign my name?" For a second, the only sound between us was wind. Then Claire whispered, "I copied it from an old check." I nodded slowly. There it was. The truth. Not complete. Perhaps. Not yet. But enough to end the lie she had been telling herself. "I'm sorry," she said. The words came quickly, almost desperately. "Mom, I am so sorry. I wasn't thinking." Brian was under pressure. He said if we missed this chance, everything would fall apart. Everything did fall apart. I said, "You just thought it would be mine." She looked at me like I had struck her. I did not feel satisfaction. Only grief. A mother is supposed to know her child, or at least that is what I had believed. But sometimes, you only know the version of them they allow you to see. The ship docked in Nassau the following morning. Claire did not come with me when I went ashore. She said she felt sick. I believe she was sick. Not with the flu. With fear? Evelyn had arranged for a local notary to meet me at a small law office near the port. The office was on the second floor of a white building above a pharmacy. The air conditioner rattled in the corner, and the notary's desk was covered with tidy stacks of paper. I signed a sworn statement confirming that I had never authorized the sale, have never signed the listing agreement, and never granted Claire power of attorney. I signed another statement, asking the county recorder to flag my property records for potential fraud. Then I signed a new durable power of attorney not for Claire, but for Evelyn, limited specifically to protecting my property while I was still traveling. It was not a decision I made lightly, but I wanted someone I trusted to have authority in case Claire tried to move faster than I could. When I returned to the ship, Harold had sent another message. Rebecca, police were at your house this afternoon. Your attorney's investigator came too. Claire's husband arrived in a black sedan. He looked upset. I stayed inside like you asked. Attached was a photograph from Harold's front window. Brian stood in my driveway, one hand on his hip, looking at my house as though it had betrayed him. There was a deputy beside him, and near the front porch, a woman in a gray coat was taking pictures of the lockbox by the side gate. I called Evelyn immediately. Did you send someone? I asked. Yes, she said. An investigator documented the lockbox, the realtor access, and the timeline. We also received copies of the documents. What did you find? Rebecca. The purchase agreement and listing agreement were signed electronically from an email account created in your name 2 weeks ago. I closed my eyes. I don't have another email account. I know. The account was created using your date of birth and a recovery phone number. My recovery phone number? It belongs to Brian. The ocean seemed to tilt beneath me. So he was involved? Yes. Evelyn spoke carefully. There is more. The buyer is an LLC connected to Brian's cousin. For a moment, I could not speak. The house had not been listed for an honest sale. They had set it up to sell my home cheaply to someone inside their circle. Then, once the title transferred, they could have resold it at full market value. The missing $90,000 was not an accident. It was the point. Brian's business investment had been a lie, or at least only part of the truth. They had planned to turn my home into quick money before I could come back and ask questions. Will they be arrested? I asked. I cannot promise that, Evelyn said. But we have referred the forged signature, the false email account, and the attempted property transfer to the appropriate investigators. The county recorder has also placed a fraud alert on your property. Can they still get into my house? Not legally. And when you return, we will change every lock, remove any unauthorized access, and secure your documents. I looked out over the water. For 9 months, I had thought grief was the worst thing that could happen to me. I had been wrong. Grief was losing William. This was learning that someone I loved could use my grief as a weapon. The rest of the cruise passed in silence. Claire stayed in the cabin most of the time. Once, she asked if we could talk. I told her we would talk at home, with Evelyn present. She looked stunned. You need a lawyer to talk to your own daughter? No, I said. I need a witness. When we returned to Willow Creek, Harold met me at the airport. He stood near the baggage claim, wearing the same brown jacket he always wore in autumn, even though it was still warm outside. When he saw me, his face softened. Then he hugged me. Not too tightly, just enough. You're home, he said. Yes, I whispered. I am. Claire followed several steps behind us. She did not say a word. At my house, Evelyn was waiting in the driveway with a locksmith and a young woman from a digital forensics company. The first thing I noticed was that the front porch light had been replaced. It was a small thing, but I had chosen that light with William 15 years earlier. He liked the warm brass finish because, he said, it made the front of the house look welcoming. Claire had changed it without asking. Maybe because she thought the house was already hers to alter? The locksmith changed every exterior lock. He replaced the lockbox. He reset the garage keypad. The digital forensics specialist helped me secure my email, change my passwords, and freeze my credit. Then Evelyn handed me a folder. Inside were copies of the documents, the forged listing agreement, the false purchase agreement, the draft power of attorney, and an email exchange between Brian and his cousin. Brian had written, "Rebecca will be out of reach for the whole week. Claire has her convinced this is a healing trip. Once the papers are done, she'll be too embarrassed to fight it." I read the sentence twice. Then I placed the folder back on the kitchen table. I did not scream. I did not break anything. I made coffee. It was something my hands knew how to do. I filled the kettle. I measured the grounds. I waited for the familiar sound of water heating. Evelyn sat quietly at the table while I did it. When I placed a cup in front of her, she looked at me with concern. "Rebecca, you don't have to be composed right now." "I know," I said. Then I looked toward the empty chair where William used to sit. "But I need to be clear. The investigation took time. It was not resolved in one afternoon. Real life rarely is. The real estate agency terminated the listing and reported the forged documents to its compliance department. The title company formally voided the attempted transaction. The county recorder kept a fraud alert on my property file, so no transfer could be processed without direct verification. The law firm withdrew the power of attorney package and turned over its communications with Claire. And after reviewing the electronic records, investigators opened a case involving the forged signatures, the false email account, and the attempted fraudulent sale. Brian's cousin backed away quickly once he realized the documents had been disputed. He said he had been told I wanted to sell, and that the low price was because I wanted a fast closing. Whether he knew more than that was for investigators to determine. Brian lost his position at his insurance firm after they learned he had used company time and a work email address to communicate about the transaction. Claire was not arrested that day, but she had to face the consequences of what she had done. Evelyn helped me petition the court for a protective order, preventing Claire and Brian from entering my property or handling my financial matters without written permission. The judge did not need much persuasion. The documents spoke for themselves. Claire moved out of the apartment she shared with Brian several weeks later. He had been in more debt than she admitted. The so-called investment was a desperate attempt to cover loans, unpaid business expenses, and money he had hidden from her. That did not excuse her, but it explained the panic she had mistaken for love. One rainy Tuesday in November, she came to my front porch alone. I saw her through the window before I opened the door. She looked thinner, tired, older than she had looked on that ship. For a moment, I saw my little girl again. Then, I remembered that little girl had grown into a woman who needed to take responsibility for her own choices. I opened the door but did not invite her in. "Mom," she said, crying before she finished the word. "What do you need?" "Claire? I want to apologize. Not because of the case. Not because Brian left. I know I ruined everything." I stood quietly. She wiped her face with both hands. "I kept telling myself I was helping you, but I knew that wasn't true. I knew you would never agree. I knew I was taking advantage of Dad being gone." That was the first honest thing she had said in months. "I don't know if you can ever forgive me," she said, "but I'm getting help. I started counseling. I found a job. I'm paying back what I can for the legal costs." I nodded. "I'm glad you are getting help." She looked hopeful for half a second. Then I continued. "But forgiveness is not the same as trust. Her face fell. I know. No, I said gently. You are learning it. There is a difference. I told her she could write to me. She could call on Sundays. But she would not have a key to my house. She would not have access to my accounts. She would not make decisions about my health, my property, or my life. Not because I hated her. Because love without boundaries had nearly cost me my home. Claire nodded through her tears. Then she walked back down the porch steps and into the rain. I watched until she reached the sidewalk. After she left, I locked the door. It was not a dramatic moment. It was just the click of a new lock in a door William and I had chosen together. But to me, it sounded like truth. Months later, I planted yellow mums beside the front porch. Harold helped me carry the bags of soil. And we laughed when he accidentally tore one open across the driveway. The brass porch light was back where it belonged. The lockbox was gone. The new keys stayed in a small dish by my door, and only I knew where the spare was kept. Some evenings, I still missed William so badly that it felt like the air had gone out of the room. I still reached for the second coffee mug sometimes. I still turned to tell him something before I remembered. But I had learned something he would have wanted me to know. Being alone did not make me powerless. Being grieving did not make me incapable. And being a mother did not mean I had to surrender my dignity to a child who mistook love for permission. My house remained mine. My name remained mine. And so did my voice. If this story moved you, please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs the reminder that age, grief, and kindness never erase a person's right to be heard. In the comments, tell me, what boundary would you put in place first after someone betrayed your trust?